Hiya, thank you for joining me today for my slideshow, Amy Tollyfield. This is my Assessment 1 submission, reflection on a challenging aspect of teaching for the ACAK700 module. So the focus of this study, this assignment, is helping to reduce the attainment gap in the learning of higher education, brackets open HE, brackets close, students. Just very quickly to say, throughout this presentation, I refer to the triangle diagram as Burgess's triangle diagram. I am aware the article for which the triangle features, the triangle diagram, was written by Burgess among other academics. I am aware of this, and this is properly cited at the end of this presentation. Thank you. Some key points to note before we begin. The objectives of the PowerPoint presentation you will view now. Based on those objectives, this is the structure of this presentation. So firstly, what is meant by the phrase attainment gap? You can see here I've got two dictionary definitions. I've got attain and I've got gap. And then I've actually at the bottom formulated my own definition of attainment gap itself based on the definitions, the dictionary definitions of attainment and gap. Main things to kind of point out here when you're reading these definitions, attainment, I kind of discerned relates to tangibly obtaining something, okay? And gap, this second dictionary entry here, relates to a measurable distance, and that's how I formulated my own definition at the bottom of attainment gap. So what causes or can contribute to an attainment gap in the learning of HE students when compared to their peers? Now, all the examples that I'm going to present to you, all the suggestions of what can contribute to an attainment gap, they all come under this diagram here, okay, which is Burgess, Annette Burgess 2020. Now, assuming that everyone in your classroom is already there, okay, everybody there, we're not looking at financial reasons as to whether or not they can be there. any other factors in why they came to be in the classroom. Okay, we're looking at the fact that they're now in the classroom. What is causing the attainment gap in their learning in your setting? Okay, and based on this triangle, attitudes, skills, knowledge, we're going to see that all the possible reasons that there could be an attainment gap in learning, they all fall under Burgess's triangle here. Okay, they're all items that are an attitude problem or a skills problem or a knowledge problem. Every issue we're going to come across now that can cause an attainment gap, they're all going to feed into Burgess's triangle here. Okay, so the students already in your classroom, they're already sat down in your higher education setting. Any of the other barriers that came before are gone. They're here in your setting. What is helping to cause this attainment gap? Helping, not a great word. What is contributing to this attainment gap in their learning? Okay, what's making it harder for them to learn? Now here we go. We've actually got an image here of how many students from China studied in the United Kingdom in 2020, and it's a high figure. It's 143,867 students. Okay, that's how many students from China came to study in the United Kingdom in 2020. All right, and those students there, they have potentially a disadvantage compared to the other students in their class. Again, it ties into Burgess's triangle here for the reasons that they potentially, as foreign students, are not necessarily accustomed to this country's language, culture, higher education institutions, or any other necessary aspect when integrating into this country and integrating into a foreign setting. Okay, this is just one of the many examples on the UNESCO website of students traveling to different locations to study. And here on Burgess's triangle, we can see what contributes to the attainment gap for these students when compared to their peers. It is a knowledge gap. It's not necessarily skills. As a foreign student, they may well have great skills in terms of integration. Okay, they may be better at integrating than a lot of the national students. Okay, it may not be an attitude problem. They may well have a great attitude to learning. They may wish to learn more in some settings because they've come all this way to learn. But it's a knowledge issue. Okay, the attainment gap is worsened and increased by their lack of knowledge of the culture, of the language, and the higher education institutions are different probably to their own country. So in this instance, we can see that the attainment gap here is increased due to knowledge issues of visiting a new country to study and struggling to integrate with that country. So some other factors that can cause or contribute to an attainment gap in the learning of HE students are attitude, personal issues, difficulties in their FYE, first year experience. And I've got some references here. You can do further reading on this as well if you wish to. So Sally Kift, in her 2015 Herzer article, which I'll link at the end, it's about transition pedagogy. She writes the 2012 attrition rate was around 19.5%. When crude, and basically that's how many students are not continuing on the same course at the same university. 19.5. Okay, so that's they might have switched to a different course at the same uni or the same course at a different uni, but as for the same course at the same university, 19.5% did not in 2012. First year students did not continue on the same course, and that's quite high. So obviously Kift's article there is all about students not being able to sustain their studies for whatever reason, and there can be all kinds of reasons for that. She talks about first, second and third generation approaches to learning and to attrition, and to how we can keep students back in the system and keep them learning and keep them on the course they're on, and why are students leaving higher education, what are the reasons for that. Her article is all about that, her chapter I should say. You know, what are the reasons that students don't continue in higher education, and there can be a variety of reasons. A lot of them are social pressures, the curriculum itself, the level of work ethic needed to sustain their studies. Okay, there are many factors, and the KIFS chapter is all about that. I'll link that at the end. So one of the texts I've found most interesting so far is the Lecturer's Toolkit, a practical guide to assessment, learning and teaching, 5th edition, Phil Race. And he has a couple of things to add here in terms of attitude and personal issues for students. So he writes, low motivation is usually a problem with younger students rather than mature returners. And then continues to say, many young people may demonstrate anti-authoritarian attitudes. So obviously we need to bear in mind that younger students especially are very easily influenced by their peers and what's cool and what's not cool. And in that instance, it can sometimes be cooler to not study so hard and to be more of a social butterfly, if you like. So we need to factor that in. That's an attitude reason why students may struggle to give full attention in lectures and seminars and to their studies. And then Race acknowledges as well, again under personal issues, and similar to what Kift talks about in her chapter, students can have difficult lives. Okay, students can really struggle with academia for a number of reasons. Race actually writes, first year direct entry and international students may be far from home, family, friends, social and cultural networks and familiar environments for the first extended time in their lives. Some delight in their new environment, others are homesick, but all are expending a lot of their energy adjusting their lives. Differences between school and university are more profound than perhaps they were when we were new students. Okay, so that's a Race quote there in that book I've mentioned just now, and again I'll reference that at the end. So again, this is all attitude, reasons it can be difficult to attain the best grades. These can be attitude issues in Burgess's diagram here. Another factor that can affect the attainment gap of learning between higher education students is foundational knowledge upon entering the lesson. Each student will already have a different amount of knowledge to each other about the subject on which you're about to teach, and therefore they will be at different advantages based on that. Under Burgess et al.'s triangle diagram, that would obviously come under knowledge. So the top one here is not an issue from the student side, slightly turns Burgess's triangle on its head here. Burgess's triangle is specifically about students learning. However, unconscious bias in the lecturer, that's an attitude problem. The lecturer may be biased without realizing, or maybe with realizing, and that may affect the attainment gap of the student. The student may not achieve as highly if the lecturer is biased, and I've put a quote there from Phil Race on that. And also finally, because I haven't addressed it yet, the skills actually needed for HE learning, higher education learning. I haven't really addressed skills in the triangle, but multiple materials I've been reading over the last couple of weeks all talk about how it's an adjustment. Obviously coming to higher education learning from school or college, and how it's a completely different skill set in some ways to come to that, and how to adjust to the new styles of learning. So sometimes students don't have the skills necessary yet to adjust to their new environment, and I would particularly recommend Kift and Race for more comments on skills. So we've figured out some of the ways that the attainment gap can be worsened for students. Obviously, there are always going to be more possible reasons, but we've found out some of the ways. So with that in mind, what are key academics advising in terms of strategies for helping to reduce the attainment gap in the learning of HE students? Now, I've put this in a little circular flow diagram for the purpose that these ideas all feed into each other. Academics are saying similar things, and obviously because it kind of works towards the same goal. All of these ideas work towards the learner, and the circular diagram shows that kind of progression of circular reinforcing of of learning and good ideas. Okay, it all feeds into each other. So this is how to improve, I guess, the attitude of the student in terms of the diagram for Burgess. So we can understand how individual students learn via lesson study practices, and this feeds into Kerbin and Kopp's article chapter about lesson study. So we need to understand how the student learns. What is the student gaining from the learning? How do they best learn? And Burgess and other academics, and also Race, say similar things here. So Race is saying, find out from students now and then how it is for them, how the learning is for them. Find out how they're getting on. And Burgess adds to that, Burgess et al., questioning the learner. Okay, we need to question. We need to question the learner. We need to understand what works for them, and in understanding that, we can help to improve their attitude to learning. We can understand what the obstacles are. What else can we do to try to reduce the attainment gap among students, HE students? So Tang Ho mentions effective strategies, which include establishing good rapport with students and showing concern for both strong and weaker students. These kind of attitudes will increase students' attitude again, actually, in terms of making them feel more engaged, more appreciated, more respected, and more likely to want to learn, and showing concern for their personal lives and how they're doing. Obviously helps in terms of their skill set too, because it helps them to kind of adjust to higher education learning in that sense. Grouping students by mixed abilities. So again, it's a case of sharing skills and sharing knowledge and helping those students to help each other, really. Phil Race also comments on the fairness of randomizing student groupings for group work. Again, it's about sharing skills, sharing knowledge, helping the students help each other, helping them to reduce the attainment gap of each other. If students are in mixed ability groups, they will push each other more than if their abilities are the same. So another way to help reduce the attainment gap in students' learning is to appreciate that students learn in different ways, and to follow up on this by presenting your learning resources in myriad ways. Got some examples of here of how you could present your learning: audio, visual, text, peer-to-peer learning, group work, individual work. And these will help all kinds of aspects of Burgess et al.'s triangle, in the sense that you can increase knowledge, skills and attitude by presenting learning in the way that best suits your student. And just going back to the comments of Kift and Race and how difficult the first year experience can be, the final point here is to recognise the importance of their social and personal lives, particularly for first year students. Understanding this, and as Ho says, engaging well with your students and taking an interest in their lives will help to improve their attitude to learning, and thus help to reduce in some way the attainment gap. So just some final words on the material that we've covered today. There are many reasons why there may be an attainment gap between students, HE students. There are myriad reasons for these, and these generally fall under attitude, skills and knowledge on Burgess et al.'s triangle diagram here. However, if you can identify where on this triangle the pitfall in their attainment lies, you can help to improve the issue. You can never fix everything, but you can do your best. I think primarily what I've learned, and hopefully you have too, from this study, is that really understanding, as Kerbin and Kopp identify within their lesson study material, really identifying how your student learns and what is best for them, and asking the right questions of your students is really the best way to understand how to fix the attainment gap. You can't personally fix every problem as the lecturer, but you can certainly give it a good go, and also introduce other students to the mix, such as suitable group work, to help students to learn from each other. This is my works cited list, so you can follow up on any of these references if you like. Suggested wider reading if you'd like to read further on this topic. What have I done personally to try to make this PowerPoint learning resource more accessible for you? Thanks for watching. See ya.